Yo guys, what's up? So there is a huge response on the video that I just released a couple of days ago by Pastor John. It's literally half a page of stuff that he wrote there. And I didn't read it fully, I was flying over it, but I will basically react to it spontaneously now while I read it for you. So, in the early 2000s, it was a lot easier to be different. Subgenres, the way they are now, weren't defined. The equipment was nowhere near where it is now. The sound has heavily defined by the tools. In the current high-tech genre, it has defined sound and direction. Call it a formula. We use the formula with breaking some rules here and there. I try make every track different to the next. But if you're a producer trying to nail a genre, it's going to be a reference point. We all have our reference points for all art. Nothing is original. Some people don't want to bring something new to the table, and quite frankly, they don't have to. Let them create, even if it's formulaic. Sounds similar to the other tracks or producers, it doesn't matter. You need to know the boundaries before you can break them. What is merit based? Being a pioneer, sounding different, or being popular because of your music was on pirate sites before the advent of social media? There's also a lot of merit in marketing. There are some great artists whose music is unknown and unheard because of the lack of marketing. Because artists are not pioneering new genres doesn't mean they lack merit. Or because they never played in Goa in the 2000s doesn't mean they aren't part of the movement. Don't shut people down because they don't have a unique identifying sound. Just appreciate that they are adding to the digital bank of creations exactly as you are. Once they have nailed the sound, which is familiar to them, aka formulaic high-tech, then they can bring their own personal touches and break into new space. Just make music and worry less about what other people are doing. You can't hate on people who use banks and presets and end up sounding on the same when you're selling banks and presets yourself. So I think I'm gonna reverse backwards or like respond backwards. Respond to the last thing that he says because he repeated that actually also in the Instagram account. So this is, I think, what he is the most interested in. And this is also, I think, the weakest argument of the whole pretty good comment, I think. And mostly absolutely true, and I agree for the most part. But let's go back, as I said, from the end. He says, basically, I'm paraphrasing, he says that if you're using samples, then you cannot make unique sound. So, like, this is a statement which I would, like, absolutely not agree to because the literally most of the best tracks have some parts samples. Like I would argue really the high majority in this case. So sample work, in my opinion, is a very important way of being creative. That means somebody's tossing you something and you need to do something with that and embed it into the whole musical structure, which is really not that easy and needs a lot of understanding, knowledge and many other things. So I think sample work is important, and I always used some parts of my music samples, and I think that it just like makes music more fresh, in my opinion. There is also good projects which have a different approach and they don't use any samples at all, but that is definitely not my approach. So I myself would say that the most unique pieces of music are written used samples, or are the samples weren't used. Like I could give some examples, but to be honest with you, yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory. Then the thing with presets are sold by me also with a purpose of reverse engineering and learning from the presets, because that is a very effective way of learning sound design. It gives you a direct insight into the structuring of somebody that is maybe quite experienced with the synthesizer. So I think it's one of the most valuable ways of learning how to write patches, and it was one of my main ways to actually, learn sound design with the virus, was analyzing, reverse engineering, literally going from the last point of the synthesis to the first point of the synthesis, and trying to figure out what makes each sound special. What is the moment when the sound actually becomes special? Because many times the sound is very mundane, and then there's this one secret sauce ingredient that the person used, which is very, very powerful. So I do not really agree with that, and I'm also using presets, not many times, but sometimes, from myself, first of all, because I made hundreds of presets myself. As Pastor John says, I was selling them, I'm still selling them, so this is, of course, not really a strong argument in my opinion, but fair enough if he thinks so. I think that it's very creative to work creatively with samples. And I am a proponent of heavy, intelligent sample work. But there is some requirements for that. If it's, it can be so or so, of course. It requires a lot of understanding. This is the thing. As I already said in the response very clearly, and I think most people understood it, at least according to the statistics and the feedback, is that I never intended to shut people down. That seems a little bit like that in this short snippet of actually a longer video. But yeah, most of the arguments I would agree with. Like, for example, of course, that, many musicians are not really talented in marketing and they never really get discovered, and it's actually good music, but it lacks in reach. And then all the other stuff I think is like a little bit funny, because in the response already my explanation was quite clear in the video response that I put out, that I am a big supporter of any newcomers. So that's about that, I think. And then, yeah, he is right also about the fact that nobody reinvents the wheel, because music is to a certain percentage just physics. It's like how the universe works, reflected in vibrations and encoded in symbols, and many different symbol languages, from frequency over tonality and so forth. Like many complex, basically symbol assortments that we use to talk about those highly complex things that happen in music. I think that's it. That's all what I have to say to that, I believe. But huge thanks to Pastor John, because that is really like a proper paragraph in my opinion. And I hope that I answered most of the questions. Yeah. Okay, that's about it. I see you guys in the next one. Cheers. Booyakasha.